Hello, and welcome to another one of our Wednesday Bible studies as we conclude our time together in the book of Proverbs. We finished the workbook written by Mike Willis dealing with the concept of many of the themes that are found in the book of Proverbs. I wanted to do one more concluding lesson today over Proverbs chapters 8 and 9. And then next week we will be beginning, Lord willing, our study in the book of Ecclesiastes. To those who listen to our program from other localities, if you would like to have a copy of the workbook that we're going to be using on the book of Ecclesiastes, if you would just please send me a text or make a note to this broadcast with your name and address, I will be glad to get that in the mail to you so you can enter into that study as well. We've looked at many important themes from the book of Proverbs, but there is a real focus point here in Proverbs chapters 8 and 9 that I want to talk about in our concluding session today as we talk about powerful points from Proverbs. The point that Solomon is making in these two chapters has to deal with the idea of our making a choice. We have two routes that we can follow in our system of thinking. We can be thoughtful, we can be wise, we can make measured decisions, we can be sober minded and evaluate alternatives and do things in a reasonable manner, or we can give ourselves over to impulsive reflex. We are driven by our feelings and by our emotions. And oftentimes we make very, very poor choices because we simply do not have the wisdom to think through the alternatives and to make the right choice. Let's take, for example, an individual that we see that is drowning. We understand their life is in peril. It's very important that we do something to save them. And so impulsively, we may think, well, I'm just going to jump in there and I'll fish them out and I will save their lives. We bail in, we start swimming out there and realize that we don't have the skills or the stamina to be able to effectively rescue that person. And maybe they are caught in an undertow or some kind of a riptide. And now we find ourselves caught up in the same situation. And now both of us may very well drown. We had a good intention. We wanted to do something, but our choice was a poor choice because maybe right there beside us was a life preserver, and we could have thrown the life preserver out there and pulled that person to safety, and both of us could have survived the ordeal. But we didn't think of that. We didn't look at alternatives. We didn't see what other choices would be very viable and probably much wiser choices than our just impulsively jumping into the water to try and do something, but that something turned out to be wrong. In Proverbs chapter 8, Solomon talks about wisdom as if it is a woman crying out for attention, wanting to share that wisdom and be helpful to other people. It says, does not wisdom cry, and understanding put forth her voice? She standeth in the top of the high places, by the way of the places of the paths. She crieth at the gates, at the entry of the city, at the coming in at the doors. In other words, the availability of wisdom, instruction, sober minded guidance from other mentors and helpers, it's available to us all around if we will simply take advantage of the opportunity to accrue wisdom. But many blunder right on through life without thinking about the consequences. Continuing in verse 4, he says, unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is of the sons of man. O ye simple, understand wisdom, and ye fools, be ye of an understanding heart. We can change our course. We may be given to impulsive judgments. We may be given to not thinking through situations very well. But Solomon said you can learn to do it. The simple minded, the foolish, emotionally driven individual can learn to be more sober minded and more circumspect in the decisions that they make. And that's very important, I think, in the day and time in which we live. There is a tremendous amount of soundbite knowledge and wisdom, quote unquote, that gets thrown around a whole lot, which at first glance may seem to be sensible, but many times the idea is emotionally charged, and there's a whole lot more to the story than what people would first think. And without some sober minded judgment, we can wind up maybe making a very wrong choice. Yes, there may be a problem that needs to be addressed, but what is the best solution in fixing that problem? There are some folks, for example, that kind of believe the notion that money just grows on trees. And so I need to have a bunch of free stuff. People need to give me free health care. They need to give me the payments for my college tuition. They need to give me this and give me that. And I shouldn't have to work for it, and I should not have to expect other people to be uneasy about paying all of my bills. They're just supposed to do that because it's like money grows on trees. The government just cranks it out, and I have all the money that is necessary, rather than realizing that nothing in this life is free. And someone is going to have to foot the bill for all of the things that I'm wanting to receive in a free fashion. So I've got to do some thinking about what is the best choice to be able to solve my problem. I may need assistance of various forms, but should I just sit back and expect it to be handed to me without obligation? There are some folks who admittedly understand that there are problems even in law enforcement, and there are other problems in our country that need to be addressed and need to be fixed. But if we suddenly try to scrap the entire system that we have right now and say it's all terrible, just take all that money, put it someplace else, what happens when you dial 911 and there's no answer? And there's no one to come help you in your time of calamity. Well, they're supposed to. Well, you took away all their money and they can't. Oh, didn't think about that. So there are so many times that we can get caught up in the emotionalism of a moment, and we think, well, here's the right answer, here's the radical thing to do, and we want to run with those impulsive emotions instead of a reasoned decision to addressing the problem. Let's look at the facts, let's see the problems, and let's see how the problems can reasonably be fixed. That's what Solomon's teaching us here. The idea that we need to seek after wisdom and have sound judgment and find what is really the best solutions for the problems that we face. Continuing on here, as wisdom is pleading to be heard, she says, "Hear, for I will speak of excellent things, and the opening of my lips shall be right things." That's what we're looking for, is we want to find the right answers to the challenges that we face in life. Many times the answers that are put forth are not thought through very well. There are consequences that are byproducts of the decisions that are made, and maybe those byproducts are worse than the initial problem we were trying to fix. And so we have to learn to focus on what's the right thing. What is truly the best thing for everybody involved? How can I choose a course of action that's first godly, pleasing in the sight of God, that He will bless and ensure and give His blessing to, as opposed to my trying to randomly make my own thoughts and judgments, and because maybe that's what everybody else is saying, or everybody else is going down this road, I think that's just automatically got to be the right choice, and maybe it's not. We see a lot of t-shirts and stuff nowadays that give kind of a meaningful and humorous sidebar to this. It's the idea, you can't fix stupid. And that's sometimes exactly the case. The individual who is behaving foolishly, making foolish decisions, is not listening to the instruction that Solomon's giving here. He's not saying ignore problems. He's not saying to pretend things don't need to be fixed. Don't say that there's no problems that need to be addressed. But what is going to be the right thing? What's going to be the best choice? And maybe it's a little bit of this idea and a little bit of that idea and a little bit of this over here. And through all of that joint counsel is how you find a really meaningful solution. Continuing, he says, wisdom is saying, "For my mouth shall speak truth, and wickedness is an abomination to my lips." There are some people who will slant the truth to their advantage. There are some facts they don't want to acknowledge. There are some they will sometimes deny the way things really are. And then at the other extreme, there are some who are going to over amplify something and use some hyperbole to make it seem worse than what it really is. And so you've got these two extremes warring against each other. And And here wisdom is saying, what's the truth? What's the way it really is? What are the facts of the matter? And many times those facts are shockingly different than what we were first led to believe. It continues in verse 8, for all the words of my mouth are in righteousness. There is nothing froward or perverse in them. When individuals are trying to manipulate a crowd, or when they are trying to win people to their side, often they will skew the information because they have a hidden agenda. They want individuals to appear to be doing one thing when really there's a whole different objective that they have in mind. And as a result of that, if we're not wise enough to see that distinction and to see that we're being, shall we say, used, you know, we suddenly start listening to the wrong voices. Wisdom is saying the words of my mouth are in righteousness. I'm not going to say perverse things. I'm not going to be froward and mean-spirited. I'm not just going to try and gin up the emotionalism of the moment. Wisdom says, look at things from a righteous perspective, go step at a time, doing what God wants to be done. In verse 9, they are all plain to him that understandeth, and right to them that findeth knowledge. It's not hard to find a good solution. What's the best course of action? When you are stepping forward on solid facts, and when you are making decisions that explain and address even the weaknesses and the challenges. Yep, that's going to be a problem, but here's what we can do to address that. You can wind up with a solution that's going to be satisfactory to everybody. And it's going to be pretty plain, as long as you can listen. But the individual who is of a foolish mind and has stopped their ears to listening, they have a one-sided view. This is what I want. And it's got to be this, or nothing else is going to be acceptable. It's got to be this way, or else. They're not listening. And there's plain instruction that can give understanding. There is a way to be able to find through knowledge the right path to follow. And that's what wisdom teaches us to do. She says in verse 10, receive my instruction, and not silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. He said you can't buy your way out of every problem. Throwing money at it doesn't fix everything. The thing that is truly of value is to listen to the instruction. Listen to all of the areas of the problem. What are the things that need to be addressed? And then apply knowledgeable solutions to fixing those problems. That's what wisdom teaches us to do. For wisdom is better than rubies, and all the things that may be desired are not to be compared to it. Whenever you're able to look at the end of the day to the solution that you've implemented, you see a righteous outcome. You see the problem truly fixed. There is a sense of satisfaction that comes back from that. It wasn't a situation that should be manipulated so that I came out on top on this one because I made a whole bunch of money by convincing everyone they were supposed to do this or they were supposed to do that. That's corrupt. That's not pure wisdom. That's manipulation and trying to hoodwink people with false information. But the wise individual sifts through the facts to make sure that they are true and then acts accordingly. Often when in the scriptures, Jesus would talk about us dealing with sound judgment. And they cannot be condemned, we're told in the Gospel of John. A sound judgment is one that's based on all the facts. You're not going on hearsay. You are not going on, the implications and the things that someone may have made up that are possibly true or maybe not true. You've researched it, you've studied it out, and you have come to the right solution. Whenever you've accomplished that sense of satisfaction, the way in which you feel blessed and rewarded in so many ways far exceeds even silver and gold and rubies, as he mentions here, whenever wisdom is allowed to do its work. In verse 12, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence and find out knowledge of witty inventions. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, and arrogancy, and the evil way, whenever someone says, well, let's look at this problem, let's try to ascertain what the facts are, suddenly there is a chorus of voices that just want to shout them down. They're going to scream and yell, you can't say anything that's going to change your mind. You don't know anything. You have certain prejudices. You're not willing to listen. And so they figure if they scream loud enough and long enough, their evil ways will prevail. And sometimes it does. Look what happened at the crucifixion of Jesus. Was he a guilty man? No. Pilate wanted to release him. But what was the crowd out there screaming? Crucify him, crucify him, crucify him. Their voices were loud, their threats were menacing to Pilate. And so what happened? Jesus was crucified. So just because the crowd is loud does not mean that they're right. Sometimes in their pride and in their arrogance, they are stopping their ears to any counterpoint, to any truth that might contradict their narrative. Solomon is saying here, wisdom doesn't behave like that. Wisdom and the course of wise choice making is radically different than this impulsive foolishness, this sometimes stupidity that individuals will advocate because they have not the right answers, they're not evaluating the facts, and they are driven by a blind emotionalism. In verse 14, the voice of wisdom continues, counsel is mine, and sound wisdom. I am understanding. I have strength. The facts are hard to refute. When you lay the facts on the table, it exposes all of the misconceptions and the misapplications of information and the way in which things maybe have been twisted and skewed. The facts of the matter will help you come to sensible decision making. And so she says, sound wisdom. And she said, I am understanding. I have strength. You have the power of the truth. And then she goes on to say, by me kings reign and princes decree justice. By me princes rule and nobles, even all the judges of the earth. I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. He said that's how good government is run. Those individuals who are in positions of power, kings, nobles, princes, the good ones are the ones who are willing to listen, to investigate all of the facts, and see what's going to be the best for everybody involved, and they will move forward with sound reasoning, rather than simply seeing who gets to them first, and gets their ear first, and gets them to go off on a judgment that's not wise. That was what happened to the king. Whenever there was a group that was wanting to see Daniel destroyed, they came to the king and they petitioned him to sign an absurd law saying that no one could pray for the next 30 days. Why would you sign that? But the king was swayed by the flattery of this group, saying they should only honor you and it should be a focus on you. And so he did not investigate any further to see why they might be coming up with this law. So he signs it. And then they apprehend Daniel. And Daniel, who is a good friend of the king, winds up being thrown in the lion's den. And God delivers him. But here's the whole point. That king did not embrace wisdom and sound judgment. He listened to the one that got to him first, the one that was trying to convince him to go down a certain way, and the facts were not all laid on the table. Wisdom goes on to say, I love them that love me, and those that seek me early shall find me. It's something that needs to start early in life. The earlier, the better. What do you think about this? What does the Bible say about this? What are going to be the consequences of this choice making? Our children need to learn those skills and traits early on, so that they're not tossed to and fro with every wind of doctrine, but rather their convictions are based on Scripture. Their actions are based on the knowledge of what the Bible says, so that they can make choices that are right consistently. Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue than choice silver. He said, you'll prosper if you're wise. People will see the value of your leadership. They will seek your counsel and leadership in the business world or in the social, wherever you may turn. Individuals will respect the person of integrity, the person of sound and sober judgment, the individual that can be relied on to look at the facts and is not easily swayed just by the volume level of the crowd. People appreciate someone who will give them a fair hearing. And so wisdom goes on to say, I lead in the way of righteousness, in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. You will be blessed as we make these right choices. We're going to be able to see a benefit from the appreciation of others when they can find someone who can lead them wisely. That I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old. I was set up from everlasting, from the beginning, or ever the earth was. Then there were no depths. I was brought forth, when there were no fountains abounding with water. Before the mountains were set, before the hills was I brought forth. While yet he had not made the earth, nor the fields, nor the highest part of the dust of the world. When he prepared the heavens, I was there. And when he set a compass upon the face of the earth, when he established the clouds above, when he strengthened the fountains of the deep, when he gave to the sea his decree, that the waters should not pass his commandment, when he appointed the foundations of the earth, then I was by him, as one brought up with him. I was daily his delight, rejoicing always before him, rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, and my delights were with the sons of men. He said, here wisdom is saying, I've always been here. God is the epitome of wisdom. And I've been by his side since the creation of the world and through all of time. There has been a right and true and virtuous path, and I have been there to guide men through it. And Solomon here is encouraging us to say wisdom is the choice and the path that we want to follow so that we can do things right. Now therefore, wisdom says, hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and refuse it not. There are some people that just will not listen. I often saw an adage down through the years, don't confuse me with the facts, because I've made up my mind. I know what I want. It's what I see. And so they don't want to have any other opportunity of instruction to even be presented to them. Wisdom says, blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gate, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of the Lord. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. There are some individuals who want their ways so badly that even if it means dying as a martyr and all of this coming crashing down as a futile gesture and doing something totally wrong, they would still rather suffer that fate than be reasonable. To stop and to think that maybe they're wrong, maybe there's another side to this situation. The blessing is for the man that hears me. And wisdom is not impossible for us to attain. The facts are there. The opportunity of giving a well-rounded based decision, something that is made of substance, it's all available there. If we but search for it and listen and compare our steps to the advice given of God. In chapter 9, wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. She hath killed her beasts. She hath mingled her wine. She hath also furnished her table. She hath sent forth her maidens. She crieth upon the highest places of the city. Whoso is simple, let him turn in thither. As for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, Come, eat of my bread, and drink of the wine which I have mingled. Forsake the foolish, and live, and go in the way of understanding. So wisdom's always begging for individuals to simply stop and listen. Listen to the facts. Take that knowledge and use it wisely. It's not one of those cases of wisdom shutting the book and saying, well, I'm sorry about your luck. But rather, there is always room to reevaluate, to reassess, and to think maybe there's a better way. She goes on, he that reproveth the scorner getteth to himself shame, and he that rebuketh a wicked man getteth himself a blot. Reprove not a scorner, lest he hate thee. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love thee. He said there are some people that are going to remain unreasonable. And even though you try to lay facts before them, they will close their ears. They have no intention of changing. And usually you have invoked their wrath. They're mad because you don't see things the way they see them. You're not doing things the way they say to do them. And so now you are the enemy and you deserve to be scorned and punished. But a wise man appreciates the new input, the new information. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. And so the wise man will listen. If it's not going to give him a satisfactory answer, if it's slighted information, if it's distorted information, he'll spot it and he will discard it. But to the truly sound of mind, they're going to listen and benefit from what they get. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be yet wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. He may not know it all. There may be aspects of the problem he does not know and he does not understand, and he appreciates the enlightenment so that he may make a better decision. That's what wise people do. They want to sit down at the table. Let's talk about this. Let's do some brainstorming. Let's see what options and possibilities are there. But there are some who want no part of it. I've got the answer. This is the way it's going to be. And they're unreasonable. That's not the individuals who are listening to the voice of wisdom. We find in verse 10 of the 9th chapter, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the holy is understanding. For by me thy days shall be multiplied, and the years of thy life shall be increased. If thou wilt be wise, thou shalt be wise for thyself. But if thou scornest, thou shalt alone bear it. So here Solomon makes the point that we can bring our own calamity on ourselves because we scorn wisdom. We don't have a fear of the Lord. For the first and foremost thing is what is God's commandments and how can we fulfill his righteousness. When that's not the primary goal and it's all about me, we don't have that understanding that is from above. It says the knowledge of the holy is understanding. And so it can even give us length of days as we make wise choices. Everybody else may be following some vice or some fad, and it becomes very popular for everybody else to do. But maybe it soon comes out that it's detrimental to your health. And you wind up engaging in these popular habits, but you've destroyed your health in the process. The wise man thinks twice before he jumps in to that kind of behavior. In contrast, as we go on in this 9th chapter, a foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knoweth nothing. For she sitteth at the door of her house, on a seat in the high places of the city, to call passengers to go on their ways. Whoso is simple, let him turn in thither. And as for him that wanteth understanding, she saith to him, stolen waters are sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. For he knoweth not that the dead are there, and that her guests are in the depths of hell. In contrast, wisdom is saying there is that clamorous woman, or there are those foolish voices that try to sway and woo and recruit people into the ways of iniquity. And folks who don't have understanding, folks who have no desire to come to the true, truthful answer and solution to problems, they're quick to be swayed. As in the flirtation of this foolish woman. Oh, it's going to be so sweet. There's going to be wonderful advantages. You're going to do this in secret. No one needs to know what we're up to. We're going to surprise them. All of those precursors are simply setting someone up and really giving them warning that a foolish course of action is just about ready to be sprung. The wise person would wonder, why are you being so secretive? Why are you not openly discussing this? What is your agenda? Wisdom is the best thing. And so that's why, as we go back to the very beginning of Proverbs, as we began this whole series, in Proverbs 1 and verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. I hope that we understand the value of seeking after wisdom. That's what we've tried to look at throughout this entire course in Proverbs. What is the wise course of action? What does the word of the Lord say? Can we be sober minded enough and have good judgment, wise enough to seek God's counsel and do what is righteous and right? Or do we allow ourselves to be blinded, to make foolish choices, impulsive choices, and do those things that are unrighteous in the sight of God? Well, I hope that we can all get stronger in our path to wise decision making and doing the things that are pleasing to God. And I hope you've enjoyed this study in the book of Proverbs. And Lord willing, then next week we will be continuing as we move into a very exciting letter, another example of Solomon's wisdom, as we start our study in the book of Ecclesiastes. And we look forward to having you join us then.